So we really do, as an industry, we sort of do talk out of both sides of our mouth. But I mean, I don't mean that in a judgmental way. I'm just saying, like, when we talk about programmatic, there is always a conversation that is up funnel about brand, because basically what we're trying to do is sort of, you know, buy video aside television and make it easy, right, and actionable. But then we also talk about the power of digital and being performance driven. Where's the mind share, and where's really the dollar sort of investment aligning today? Is it with up funnel stuff, or is it kind of performance driven, very much so driving back to a P&L?
So I think ultimately it always should be back to a P&L as far as your media investment and what you're trying to achieve. But we see it really divides the two. I see a lot of the digital focused advertisers still are focused on the metrics of very detailed lower funnel ROI. And then the heavy TV advertisers are very much more on the up funnel, focusing on branding and reach and awareness and quality content, and making sure you're hitting them at the optimal frequency. So you know, it really depends on what is the brand and what is the objective of that campaign. So.
And where are we in the conversation and dialogue around automation and operational efficiency, and, you know, there's an article every day about our industry and how it's challenged, and its business models of sort of getting more for less is the constant dialogue we're having with clients, right? I mean, where is that fitting into the conversation as well? Is that just like the dirty little secret, or do you actually have people looking to, you know, move their dollars to programmatic because they think they're going to get more efficient ad ops around it?
So I think operationally, I think it's more efficient from a programmatic perspective. I think if advertisers in general think it's a more efficient way to buy media, in some cases it could be, where you're buying just, you know, large reach, you want to cherry pick some audiences. But if you're really looking for the quality content, it's not cheaper, it's actually more expensive. Right. So imagine saying, I'm cherry picking all the great stuff out of that very small amount of inventory that's really good. I'm going to pay for that. And not only am I going to pay for it from a premium to get access to that, but I'm also going to pay a premium because I want to tie data to it. So I think it's not a dirty secret. I think that's where the digital world versus the traditional TV world are really coming together. It's like Evan said, you pay primetime rates are a lot more expensive than run-of-network or overnight.
So tell me, let's compare and contrast the conversations you have from, like, let's just talk about sort of, you know, trading desk, and you're talking to somebody that has been buying TV for 15 years and just got video under their remit. You know, we sort of have unified video, versus someone that is a digital native, been buying only digital, and now is buying digital video through programmatic platforms. Like, tell me about how those conversations differ, because I suspect they are a little bit different.
They're very different. So I'd say from a TV perspective, the first thing that people ask are really, what is the content? And how can you help me achieve what I'm doing on TV? So I'm looking to hit 10 GRPs a week, 1 week on, 1 week off, in this type of content against this, you know, this demographic. That's one component of it. From the, you know, going purely on the digital side, you hear, all right, well, here's the data sets I want to use. I'm going to use first-party data. I'm going to bring that on through a company called LiveRamp, and then I'm going to use this third-party data and overlay that on top of it. And you go pretty granular very quickly. What we're starting to see, though, as companies like Xaxis and just brands themselves are breaking down those silos that exist, I think what we're starting to see is just this common focus on an objective and an outcome, and then worrying about the tactics separately. And that's been a refreshing, I think for 2013, that's been a very big change from what I've seen in the past. And it's not so much, oh, it's all coming together. It's just that I think people are realizing that there's many different tactics, and media, and digital, and traditional, all play a role in it. And so what am I trying to do? And then it goes into the conversation you said earlier about media mix. All right, well, how do I make them all work together? And are we at a point where I'd say media mix modeling is at its prime? Absolutely not. You know, you're comparing 50 years worth of data that works really well against new and still to be proven, you know, or obviously in that direction, tactics. And even the investments, you know, how much money do you put? Well, you're going to do a test for $50,000, $100,000, even $1 million, but you're spending $25 million for that same campaign on TV. You know, at what point do you say, well, that investment didn't even give me enough to really give a good proof of concept? Now, we do see a lot of information that shows, most importantly, that the TV data in conjunction with the digital data, so the stuff that Bud is talking about with their TV set data in conjunction with online, across all the metrics, whether it's the brand upper funnel or the ROI moving product off shelf. When you pull the two together and you look at the optimal frequency that pulls, whether it's light viewers or heavy viewers or just trying to hit a frequency of 7, that works so effectively. And with that, I also would argue that the purchase behavior, the first-party purchase behavior, but also third-party, is tremendously effective in reaching and delivering both brand and kind of sales metrics. The thing that's interesting about that, as we continue to go more granular, scale becomes a problem. So, yes, I can reach only the people that you want, but that's 1 million people versus 25 million that fall within that broader demographic. So you have to balance the equation across both, and people are doing a good job of that.
Well, if we talk about sort of the curve of maturation for video, because again, I think we're remaining video-centric today. Do you think that scarcity is ever not going to be an issue? I mean, because we talk about, you read a lot of sort of theory and research and some of the think tanks sort of conjecturing that video's slope of its curve of growth is steeper than display was, and it will catch up with display in like 4 to 5 years. Do you really think that we're going to have liquidity in this market for premium video in 4 to 5 years?
It will not be like display. I mean, especially when there might be a lot more content out there. You talk about native advertising and how that's really starting to boost a lot of the inventory availability, but that's created by the advertiser. That's put into. I mean, that's not a volume driver. I think the growth is really, there will be more. Obviously, there'll be more, and I think people will continue to focus more on how do they get their content online. But there's always going to be scarcity.
And what are you guys doing in regards to back to Evan's question? From a creative perspective. I mean, right now, I've heard, you made the point of scale. The second thing that I hear that is the biggest issue within the industry is that long-form formats, right?
Yeah.
So you can double up and push a 60, but if I have a piece of brand content that's, 112 seconds, I still kind of probably want to buy media against that. So can't deliver it programmatically. I mean, where are we as far as creative and then creative optimization? Because theoretically, if you know who you're talking to, but you don't deliver a more bespoke message to that audience, then are you really getting the true ROI that you can?
So I think the long length content question first, there is inventory out there that can support that. And I think especially if you have good relationships with your direct outlets, there are places where you can place your content. Even Google with the TrueView product, I think it's a good product to get content out there, longer length ads. At the same time, though, the creative messaging, the data enhancements, there's great vendors out there, and when you couple what they can do creatively with what they can do with the data that exists, that the advertiser or the vendors or the platforms have at their disposal, that's really does come together in a nice way. I think many brands, it's a creative problem, not necessarily a programmatic problem to get the right ads out there to the right people. It's an investment that the advertisers have to make. It's a balance of who's running the show. Is it the media side running the show? All right, you have this 30-second spot, and there's a company out there like iView or Innovid that can actually take the ad and chop it and change the last frame. Whose call is that? Is the media company or is that the creative agency? And so really pulling those two, I think that's a balance of the creative length. And I think that's a pretty accurate way of how the world is looking.
Okay. Evan, so tell me specifically in programmatic and sort of with the trading desk relationship and real-time decision-making, what's your relationship like with the creative agency? Like how's that sort of play out on a typical basis?
It's a good question. I think it really depends on who we're working with and really how creative a marketer can ultimately be. In some cases, advertisers are working very closely with their creative agencies to make sure that they have creative that's easily adaptable to any type of audience. In other cases, it's just kind of a one-size-fits-all approach. I think that there's a happy medium somewhere in between the two, and I think that actually it's one place that media, technology, and creative shops haven't necessarily fully explored is what is the right level of customization and investment in terms of delivering messaging to people. Because I think, again, it kind of goes back to that idea of you need commonality, you need a shared experience, but you also need to be able to tweak it to make sense to certain types of audiences. And I think programmatic is a way of helping to facilitate that.